You got to change your habits or change your goals.
Muay Thai is 50% running and 30% laundry.
Keep working on your game. Keep innovating.
I'm always winning.
What is your pro tip? Hello and welcome to another episode of Pro Tip Conversations. Today with us, we have an exciting guest. It's Coach Michael Duncan. Coach Duncan has coached and played multiple sports at a high level. He played semi-professional football, that's American football, for the London Olympians and the Brighton B-52s, and won the European Championship with the English national team. He has built winning football programs for Oshawa Hawkeyes, Toronto Titans. We'll chat with Coach Duncan about his journey as an athlete and a coach. Welcome to the program, Coach.
Hey, thanks very much.
So to get started, how did you start in football?
Well, I started football when, such a long time ago, when I was about 12 years old. There used to be a program called Scarborough Boys, which was in Scarborough. And at the time, there was 12 or 15 teams in Scarborough. That's how much Scarborough football was. Now there's probably one program for all of Scarborough, but there used to be at least 15 teams that supported all of Scarborough. So I started with a team called the Eagles. And that was my first foray into it. They had a big tryout at Wishamwell Park, which is like at Pharmacy in 401 area. And we all went out to try out and made the team. My brother went out as well. And that's basically was the beginning of my football career. Before that, I played a little bit with this sort of house league. With the Redskins, but I didn't really play much because I was little and couldn't, he's too small. Sorry about that, but it wasn't until we got into the Eagles that football became really important to me. At the same time, I was playing soccer, and we ended up in a winning program and moved on from there. And been in football ever since.
Awesome. So tell us a bit about how you transitioned from that towards a pro career. Did you play NCAA? Yeah,
that's interesting. I originally was going to play soccer in the UK.
Okay.
And I was playing. I had a tryout with Crystal Palace and Sutton United and Tooting and Mitcham. I bounced around for a couple some semi-pro teams, and I really didn't fit in with that apprenticeship stuff with cleaning your boots and all the stuff that you needed to do to actually get to where you need to go. I was a little arrogant, actually. Let's put it that way. So I was just on my way back home. I was about to get on a plane to come back to Toronto from London. I went into the gym. I was like, man, I need to get in the gym. I can't come home this skinny. My friends would just rip me to pieces, right? So I went to the gym, and I was in the gym. These guys were doing a 3-point stance, and I was like, you play football in England? And the guy goes, yeah. I said, okay, well, where do you play? He says, I played at Streatham Common. I said, okay, so can I come? I went there on the Sunday, and I was watching these guys play, and I was like, can I get a helmet and shoulder pads? And the guy said, well, do you want the rest of the equipment? And I go, I won't need that because none of you guys will get that low. And basically just balled out. Banged up a whole bunch of guys. They walked me over to a pub and signed a contract. I stayed there for 6 years.
Wow. Yeah. So you played football, both the American and the football. So that's pretty awesome.
Very good soccer player. That was my number one sport. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. And so from there, when you signed the contract, that was, I guess, the beginning of your pro career, which you
beginning of my semi-pro career with the London Olympians. Cool. Played there for 2 or 3 years. Also, because I was a dual nationality, I was British born as well as Canadian. So I didn't count as an import, and you were allowed to have 4 imports. So my team ended up with 5 imports because I was considered an import.
Nice.
But with a British passport.
Right.
Went to London Olympians, and then that's when I ended up on the England team. We went to the European Championships in Germany one year, and ended up winning against Finland, who had a massive team, by the way. I had 300-pound linemen, and they ran the football like nobody's business. But we ended up winning that game, and with the London Olympians, we played in a couple of finals, but never won anything. And then I left to go to Brighton, B-52s. In that time before that, like the 2 years that I was in London, I called some friends from home. I was like, "Hey, Bar, I need a DB." And he, like, in high school we played beside each other, and he was like a killer, right? So I gave him a phone call, and then I needed a coach because the coaching was at a different level. So I called a friend of mine, Tyrone, and I said, "Hey, you want to come England and coach?" So I brought those two guys over. Between the three of us, we could honestly say we significantly changed the way football was played in the UK. They had a different style. I was a bit of a violent football player, so I played in secondary and really just went around killing people. And kind of the other players kind of did the same thing after that. And I'm also a lockdown corner, which is, basically I pick the ball a lot. You know what I mean? Like, you throw it my way, I'm taking it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that style, the way I played, rubbed off on some of the players as well, which changed the way they played, which is the reason why you have imports in the first place.
Right.
You hope that your imports, when you bring your imports in, guys will emulate your imports, right?
Yeah, and raise the standard, right?
The Olympians did that very well. Right?
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, and then maybe about early 90s, I left and came home.
Cool.
I was getting a little heavy when I was here for a bit, so I was like, "Oh, let me go play some touch football." So I went to play some touch football with my boys, the Raiders. I thought I'd be doing that for a couple of months. I ended up doing that for like 25 years, running a touch football program, girls program, guys programs. And then I want to say maybe about after 10 years of that, I was like, you know what? Somebody called me up and said, "Hey, you want to coach?" I said, I've been coaching almost all my life, and it turned out to be Oshawa. And so I went and helped coach. And then, my good friend Donovan Wright, who I started the fourth quarter with, we decided to coach Oshawa Hawkeyes. And the following year, they ended up giving us Donovan the head coaching job. And, we coached there for 10 years, built a national championship team, then went to another NFC team, built another championship team, national championship team. Then we went to a third NFC team, built another national championship team. And then we're like, we've done everything we can do in this league. Let's just move on, right?
Right. So what?
Long-winded, but I apologize.
No, all good. Yeah, I think you covered a few of our upcoming questions too, so that's great. I guess I was going to ask, like, in terms of your program, what's the age group that you're coaching? Is it high school and above? Is it collegiate?
Well, at fourth quarter, we opened the gym, and during COVID, actually, we opened up the January. We opened up in December or November, and COVID hit December. So the gym started booking. We didn't really have our rep teams. We had maybe one rep team at the time, but our whole idea was to build a rep program for younger kids, like starting from grade 6 and working their way all the way up to grade 13, so that we'd have rep teams in each age group.
Mm-hmm.
And then we met a great family that ran a school called Williams Academy. It was located at Victoria Park in Steeles. They introduced us to us. We thought they had a school in Scarborough, and that was it. And then they basically told us you should come visit our main campus, which turned out to be Coburg, which had dorms and resources and the weight room, and it's 5 minutes from the beach. And it was just like, are you kidding me? Like, that was like, if you thought about something in your head, it just so happened to show up, right?
Yeah.
So, we looked at it like from cradle to grave. We're like, hey, let's just take these kids from high school, take them all the way through the prep program, and get their education. Because a lot of these kids, they fall down with the school component of it. We were able to combine the two. We were able to say, hey, we can do the sports aspect of it, but Williams stays in their lane, and they could do the education component. Hence the partnership between fourth quarter and Williams Academy. This happened 3 years ago. The first year we were horrible. I think we had 6 guys, and they couldn't foul out because it would be bad, and we'd be playing with short. The following year, we got more players. Now we're in the third year. They're one of the top prep programs in the country. We also have a junior program as well. We also have a football program in William Academy, and soon to add a hockey program as well. So that's where the genesis has been for the last 3 years.
Wow. How has it been, or is there a big difference between coaching some of the different age groups? Like, you see a big difference between the younger folks and maybe the older high school folks?
Yeah. I started off, when we did kids, my partner Donovan, his son Landon was 12 years old and he was like, hey, we stopped coaching. He's like, hey, will you coach my kid?
Yeah.
I hadn't coached kid in a long time, right? But we just kind of went with, hey, we're used to coaching a pro set. We coach at a high level. I didn't really think of them as 12-year-olds. I just wanted them to run my plays.
Yeah.
Right. It turns out, we coached them at a high level. We ended up with really good players. I didn't dumb it down for them. And they ended up being very good. And a lot of those players have moved on to the next level that started at their 12 years old. The difference between coaching the little kids and the older kids is the little kids require more patience.
Okay.
The little kids don't know what they want. The little kids come with parents.
Yeah.
And the little kids want instant gratification as opposed to commitment and work.
Right.
So you have to kind of you got to help them through the process.
Yeah.
Because they don't understand the process.
Sure. Sure.
So that's the difference between coaching them. And also, more than anything else, it's what you say to them.
Okay.
A kid, you can change his mood in a second. An adult, you just piss him off.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So kind of to that point, what do you think makes someone like a really great coach? I guess just kind of for all levels.
I think, first of all, the person has to be a people person. Like, he's got to know people.
Right.
Like, you run into a lot of personalities, but funny enough, you run into the same personalities over and over again. They just come from different people, right? So you have to understand personalities. You have to understand how to read people. You got to understand people's body language. You got to be able to identify talent. You have to be able to develop talent. You got to be able to continue to learn. Like, go to the U.S., go to camps, find out what's happening next and continue to stay up with the game. If you're not going to do all that stuff, you better to bow out because the game keeps changing.
Yeah.
For football, I've been coaching football for decades. But when I started coaching football, there were 2 tight ends. There was a fullback. There were 3 linebackers. When you look at football today, there's no tight ends. There's no fullbacks. There's only 2 linebackers.
Okay.
The game evolves. You know what I mean? So you have to evolve with it. And, that. And obviously, they have to have a respect for you and what you're trying to do. And you have to have a command of these kids if you're going to be a really good coach. If they walk over you, then, your team's going to look that way.
Right. Yeah. So then as a player yourself, have you ever had or received any advice from coaches that stuck with you and kind of helped you kind of move through your career?
Advice in which way?
Well, maybe
or
just
the coaches that stay with me from the length of since the first time they had me till now.
Yeah, well, or some moments with a coach of yours that sort of stuck with you or helped you improve or helped you mentally kind of.
I had a coach called a coach by the name of Bob Poole.
Yeah, Bob
Poole has been a major influence in my life and the reason why I've actually gave back to the community. Bob Poole had this team called the Stampeders. He actually had the Rams before the Stampeders, but he's more known for his Stampeders. And I played in the Stampeders team. Yeah. So Bob Poole did something different than any other program. Bob Poole had a truck, and in his truck he had 35 pieces of gear for each kid.
Wow.
Your whole bag, your shoulder pads, your helmets, your pants, your girdle, everything in one bag. And he had 35 bags. And Bob would put him in his truck, and he'd bring him to practice. He'd put all your stuff on. You'd practice. Then you'd put your stuff in your bag, put it back in Bob's truck, and Bob would take it home. Extraordinary. Yeah. Even if you look at it today, it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Right? So Bob was the type of person that he didn't really worry about the money, because the biggest problem back then was you couldn't afford to play, and most of the best ballers who could really ball couldn't afford to play. But Bob found a way to kind of get it done. Never told us how. You know what I mean? Never really asked a lot from us, but we just make sure we show up to practice. And Bob's players showed up to practice because Bob did all this stuff. He brought the stuff to every practice. He washed the stuff. And, like, the least you can do is show up to practice. You can carry anything, right? And Bob and his coaching staff were detailed guys. They would not allow you to make mistakes, which is how I coach today. If you make the mistake, he points it out instantly. Instantly. He wouldn't let you go to the next play without pointing it out, which is how I coach today. And Bob just did things right. So that he's probably been my main influence from a coaching standpoint. I've had lots of good coaches, but probably the one that stuck in my head the most is because he got me at the youngest.
Okay.
And he gave me, some of the things that I have today.
Yeah. We're going to transition and ask you a bit about your competition days. But kind of before we go to that, I was curious if you have sort of a pro tip for some aspiring football players coming up today.
If I have, sorry?
Kind of a pro tip for aspiring players or young people who want to get into the sport today.
If you're going to get into this sport, you need to do the stuff outside of your regular practice.
Okay.
If your practice is Tuesday to Thursday and Saturday,
yeah,
you have to get better on the other days that you're not at practice.
Yeah.
And too many of the kids that come into the program or any program believe that it can get all that they need in the scheduled practices that these coaches have for you.
Okay.
And those practices, for people who don't know football or basketball or anything, are system practices. They're there to help you learn the plays, understand the system, understand the philosophy of how you play the game. The technique and the individual fundamentals, yeah, you get those at practice, but they're not enough to get you to the next level.
Okay.
That's my tip.
Yeah.
Do the extra stuff.
That's awesome. I guess we'll transition to the competition section. I did have one question, I guess, around the coaching part. So you mentioned, when you were younger and when you went over to UK that you said you were arrogant, and how you thought about the game then as a young, athlete who's on top of the world versus now when you coach. When you see that next generation of, a kid coming in who thinks they know everything, or they have that chip on their shoulder, does your experience help you kind of shape them or guide them in the right direction?
Absolutely. I could already see what they are, and some of the players you could see, I'll see me in some of the players.
Right.
But I also see some of the players that I've coached before them to understand how to get them out of, that kind of thinking. And quite frankly, they need the chip to get to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's just that, you just got to teach them how to check their ego at the door when they walk in.
Right.
And not something that I did very well when I was younger. And I was very good at everything that I did, whether I played baseball, whether I played hockey, whether I played soccer. Like, there's not a sport that I played that I was average or below average or anything in that realm. So that's where my chip came from. Right. So when I went and played in Europe, soccer wise, I thought I was it. You know what I mean? Until you get to like England and it's like hockey. Everybody could play. Right.
Yeah.
Football, there's not a lot of players that had my IQ that I played with. And not in England. They developed that over time. But when I got to England, my IQ was higher than theirs.
Right. So it's almost like you have to help these athletes harness that chip, right? Because having the chip is a good thing because it's what will make them work harder on the off days and work harder to get themselves to that level. But you have to know where you need to listen and where you need to use that to drive your performance, right? So, yeah.
And it's awesome. Really hard for the kids today because, they have things that we didn't have before. They have social media, they have technology, they can research stuff. But it's kind of their downfall because you're standing beside a guy who's been around for generations, and instead of Googling, you could ask a question.
Right.
But the kids don't really need to ask questions anymore because they think they got the answers, or they can find the answers, right? But they're missing the small details, right?
The small details. Yep. Because there's so much nuance, right, in performance. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I guess switching to your competition days. What did your preparation look like in the off season versus in a regular season?
My off season was always playing another sport.
Okay.
Or working out. Like I grew up in a generation where gold was around. So there was a lot of lifting. Like we not necessarily did it properly, but we always worked out.
Yeah.
So my off season was, I played a lot of soccer when I wasn't playing football. Worked out a lot. I was a track guy too. So that came into play as well. So all of that stuff that like back in the day, if you played all of those sports, the sports that you played at, you were probably pretty good at because all of those sports cross over somewhere. Like, you could use the skills that you got out of hockey. You could use the skills that you got out of baseball. You could use the skills that you got out of soccer. You could cross train all of those things when you're playing football. And now you had all of these skills from all of the, even for a simple example of soccer, right? Soccer is about time and space. It's about windows. It's about, making sure that you overlap and support somebody when you're playing. Like when you're playing football, you need time and space. And it takes these kids time to understand time and space. And when I say time and space, imagine a wide receiver going down the sidelines on you and then a slot that went down the middle of the field while you have a third of the field to cover.
Right.
Right. And understanding that you have to stay in the middle of those two guys and back up as far as you could go so you can cover both of them at the same time. That's time and space. Right? Not a lot of kids understand it, but because I understand it, I can teach it.
Right. And then what about during the season? When it was football season, were you still playing other sports or using that as a means of,
When I was
maybe staying? Yeah.
Earlier on, I was playing hockey and football at the same time.
Okay.
And a little bit of soccer. It's funny how when I look back at it, how many sports you're playing in 1 week.
Yeah.
But I don't think I ever remember being tired.
Right.
Yeah.
I really don't.
How did you balance all of that? So, it sounds like you're a pretty physical player and playing a lot of sports and training. How did you balance sort of staying healthy and managing injuries while being that active?
I was very fortunate not to get into a lot of injury issues. And it may be because, one, I was playing soccer, which was more cardio. And when I was playing football, I was playing corner. So I wasn't playing positions where people were punishing me. I was punishing them.
Right.
So I think that kind of was very helpful. Not that, I played a little bit of running back, a little bit of wide receiver, but I didn't really need to do all of that. It was more or less on the defensive side, which you can control what you do on the defensive side. Mm-hmm. You can hit somebody however you want to hit them. You can hit them, stay low and stay relatively injury free.
Yeah.
So it's not an area I had an issue with until I went maybe in the UK. And that was probably because we played more frequently. I never played a 12, 14 game schedule until I went to the UK.
Got it.
So that kind of played into it. I was a little bit more reckless in the UK, so I did get a little bit more injuries. But then also you're paying for money, so it's not like you can take a day off when you're hurt either, right?
Right.
So there's some other factors that play into there as well in regards to injuries, but yeah.
For sure. And then during the season, were you someone who kind of suffered from pre-game butterflies or, having nerves on game day? And if so, how did you deal with them? Okay.
No, I wasn't that guy. I was more of a visualizer. So the night before, I'm usually visualizing a pick going house.
Got it.
And I would try to I probably led the team in picks pretty well 2 to 3 years. I usually would try to pick maybe 10 times a year. right? And so for 2 days straight, I'd be like visualizing the pick. And it's usually like, somebody threw a lazy out or something like that. And when I see it or I saw the combination of the stuff that you're watching on game film, then you jump it because you were prepared for it.
Right.
So no, I didn't have those butterflies. Like, I think I had them more in soccer, to be frank with you. I never had them in football. Football is one of those sports where I always felt I knew what I was doing.
Sorry, can you say that again? I think I just lost you for a second.
Football was a sport where I was same in soccer, but football, I always felt I knew what I was doing. I always felt like I watched enough game film. Like I always knew what the other team was doing.
Got it.
Hence the reason I became a coach, because I was a coach while I was on the field. I just did the extra stuff. You know what I mean?
Got it. So I guess, now that you are coaching and you notice somebody who kind of does have those butterflies, are you able to use your experience from your soccer days to kind of help, guide them? What are some of the tips you might give them?
Football's one of those things that as soon as you get the first play out of the way, you're good.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And it's probably almost all the sports that you've played. Like, you just tell the kids, just get the first play out of the way. And once they get the first play out of the way, they stop thinking about all that stuff anyways, because now they're in the game.
Yeah.
But, it's, I will say this. There is more anxiety issues than when I played.
Mm-hmm.
There's more challenges in that area. There was for many years, I didn't even actually believe that mental health stuff. I was like, come on, you're just soft. You know what I mean? But it's real. These kids are having those kind of challenges.
Yeah.
And it forced me as a coach to rethink the way I coach. Like I can't use the word soft, even though in my mind I think the kid's soft. Right?
Yeah.
But I won't use the word. I'll find some other way to not make him soft.
Yeah.
Right? But in football, you can't be soft.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I think it's worse to use the word though.
Yeah. And then can you, so, as part of one of the reasons we started Protip as well is that we've all, had to overcome challenges, right? And can you share with us maybe a performance, maybe it was a bad sports performance when you were competing, or maybe it's one for your team when you were coaching, and, what you learned from that experience and how you bounced back from it?
Well, I've had quite a few of them. Not the really ones that stick in my head. I think we were actually defending champions at Oshawa Hawkeyes, and we were going for a repeat. And there's a play that bothers me. Wasn't a bad play call. I just probably could have done a more conservative play call.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're probably sitting on our 35-yard line. I want to say 35 or 40-yard line, somewhere around there. And I called a simple, hook play. You know what I mean? Like, I thought we could get the first down, whatever. But our defense was playing so well. Like, I could easily have ran the football and we kicked it away. We would have been good. You know what I mean? But I threw the football. Well, I called a throwing play. It was a great pass. Quarterback, the receiver it just went through his hands, and somebody else picked it and went house. And, instead of us going back-to-back national championships, we're out of that game. So what I learned from that experience was not to second-guess myself. Because I second-guessed myself for a good year after that. And I was like, well, the pass was good. It was a good play call. If he caught it, would have been a first down.
Right.
There's some things you just can't control, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If you had all the same data again, you'd probably make the same call again. Right. So, yeah.
Probably not. I probably would have ran the football.
Well, that might be hindsight, but if you were
hindsight. Yeah, it is hindsight. But if I had to do it all over again and rethinking the whole thing, I would have run the football.
Sure. Fair enough.
But it was a good play call.
Yeah. What do you think is the toughest aspect of being a professional athlete?
commitment. I think the toughest part is the commitment. Like, you got to stay locked in. You got to commit to the process. And you got to be prepared for the mistakes and the failures and the things not going wrong. And if you're outside of where you live, you got to navigate, apartments and cars and transportation and all those other stuff that, people don't really think about. You know what I mean? You end up in a bad hotel, a bad apartment, or you end up with a bad roommate, or all those things can impact your game.
Right.
But nobody knows because you're being judged by what's on the field, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's the stuff that's outside of the game that you have to manage, and that's part of living. And just so you be clear about this, is that you've never done this before. You know what I mean? People expect you know how to do this, right? But you've never done it before. You've never moved to another country and started playing a sport that you don't know anybody in, and you're expected to play at a high level. So I could only imagine these guys at another level there. They're playing on one team and they get traded to another team, or they get moved to another team, and then you don't know anybody on that team, and now you got to prove yourself over and over and over again, right? And that's tough. That could wear on you. And you could go to another environment and not like it.
Right.
And it alters your football as well. And then you're like, I don't know if I really want to play anymore.
Right.
I mean, I know when I was in England, I was with the Olympians. It was a great time. Had a great time at Brighton as well. But London and Brighton were two different places, two different environments, two different cultures.
Right.
All had their benefits, but all had some issues with them as well too, right?
Of course. Yeah. So when you signed your first contract, was there anybody from the club that kind of assisted you with, finding an apartment, getting set up in the UK? Did you find that help there?
They did all of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they did all of it. Like they were very good with that.
Good.
Yeah, it's not something I really had to spend a lot of time. It was just doing it. Do you know what I mean? Once you get it all settled and you're in, and the guys are hanging out with you, and now you got some guys you can hang with, you feel a little bit more at home, right?
At home.
And I had come, I was in Toronto, and when I left, I didn't want to go home because I wasn't sure if I was going to come back. Because you got the homesick issues that most people don't understand either, right?
Yeah.
You're gone for like there's at least 3 months out of that period where you want to go home.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're battling that part every day. Like, I'm ready to go home. I'm ready to go home. And you stick it out. And success comes from staying one more day. Because the day you could have left is the day you could have been successful. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's usually is just stick it out one more day. And that's how you usually end up being successful. Is the day you don't quit, right?
Yeah. That's awesome. I think that might be the title of this video. When we post it, that's a great line. I guess I was going to ask on that note. It's like, what advice would you give to someone who's hoping to make a career in football?
Okay, so football, believe it or not, is more about your personality. So let's say if you're a passive person, you're not an aggressive person. There's a position in football for everybody's personality, right? If you're a hothead, you're a loose cannon, you know what I mean? You're probably playing defense, somewhere on defense, right? You know what I mean? Like whether you're on the line or at the running back, like if you're like the most of the guys who I thought were just mad and insane were linebackers.
Right.
Like they just do insane stuff. I'm in London one day and I'm driving around with these linebackers. I'm in the car with a bunch of linebackers, which I don't normally do. So I'm in the car with a bunch of linebackers and we're driving around and we're going around this roundabout. And this guy cuts one of the linebackers off in the car. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is like, the guy cut him off, whatever. He blocks the guy on the roundabout. All 4 linebackers get out of the car and drag the guy out of his car. You know what I mean? And then basically get back in my car. And I'm thinking to myself, only linebackers would do something like that. DB, wide receiver, who would have let that go? You know what I mean? So it's really about personality that defines the position. And some guys think it's their skill set and all this kind of stuff. It's really not. You know what I mean? If you're a wide receiver, and you've got a high IQ and you're a good route runner and all that kind of stuff, you probably fit the wide receiver role. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But if you can't remember like a detailed 5 and out or a detailed 10 and in, you know what I mean? But you're athletic, you're probably a DB.
Right.
You know what I mean? And they say, if your hands are suspect, you're probably a DB. I don't believe in that theory because we have to pick the ball. Our hands should be better than everybody else.
Right.
Right? But usually they throw DBs on the other side because they don't catch the ball regular.
Right.
So everything about football is based on you as a person and what your personality is.
And then I guess to that point as well, especially in North America, when we think about football, we think NFL, CFL, and that's pretty much it. But, as you found out that you were able to make a pro career in Europe, right? Mm-hmm. What would you say for someone maybe who hasn't hit like the CFL, NFL levels, how can they think about football as a means of, getting out into the world?
Europe is a great place to play football if you want to, what we call, continue your resume. Right? It allows you to continue to play football because outside the CFL and the NFL, Europe is probably the next place. They have good football in Germany, good football in Amsterdam, good football in Italy, good football in Spain, good football in England. Like there's, and there's some other smaller places that maybe don't have the resources as the other areas. Germany has probably the best resources outside of the Canada and UK or as it relates to football. You know what I mean? They love football like we do. So it's a very good place to go play football. They have a 4.4 import rule as well. So, and here's the other thing about playing football in Europe. Most people are unaware that most of the Army bases, U.S. Army bases, are based in Europe. So a lot of those guys who've played in UCLA or USC or any of those major D1 schools and decided to go in the Army, there's a ton of football players in Europe that are doing their time in service. So if they have a team that's locally in the area, they'll go play football there because it allows them to play football and stay in the Army. And they're we're talking top players, D1 players. So nice. That's where a lot of the high-end football got elevated because of the U.S. military kids that are over there playing, to go with the European kids and the imports that they bring over here. And Germany has a lot of Army bases too. So
makes sense.
It's a good place to play football. It's a good place to extend your career. It's a good place to make a couple of bucks until you figure out what you want to do. And it's a good place to extend your resume just in case you want to come back and do the CFL thing. You know what I mean? Or NFL thing, whatever you choose to do.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's
awesome. You still need an agent, though.
Yeah.
Sorry, say that again?
You still need an agent.
Uh-huh. Got
it. So we're kind of getting to the end here, but we had a few rapid-fire questions for you. No right or wrong answers, simple questions.
Sure.
Who's or do you have a favorite football player? This could be all-time, any league.
Who's my favorite, sorry?
Favorite football player, kind of could be all-time.
Of all time?
Any league, yeah.
I'd say my favorite football player would probably be Jerry Rice.
Okay. Yeah.
And Jerry Rice, when I was in the UK, we used to watch a lot of his workouts. Jerry Rice had some famous hill workouts. And Jerry Rice also was one of the leading wide receivers of all time. He did everything extra. He'd catch the ball 10 yards and he'd run 15, 20 yards. Do you know what I mean? Or he'd run to the end zone. He just did things right. He was one of my favorite players of all time.
Yeah. And then, I don't know if you're a sneakerhead, but do you have a favorite sneaker?
Jordans. Air Force.
Yeah. Classic.
Early Air Force.
Yeah. So, and then before you played or before you competed, did you have a favorite pregame song or something to get you kind of amped up or pumped up for the game?
No. No, wasn't buzzed that way.
Yeah. Did you have? Do you have an all-time favorite NFL or CFL jersey?
I have my Bills jerseys.
Yeah.
I have Andre Reed jersey.
Nice.
And then a couple last two questions here. Do you have a favorite football drill?
I used to like there's a drill that we can't do anymore. But back in the day, we used to do like bull in the ring. So in essence, you'd have one guy in the middle of the ring, and he'd have the football, and he'd have to try to get out of the ring.
Okay. Yeah. And then on the other side of that question, do you have a least favorite drill?
Yeah. Oklahoma drill.
What was that one?
Basically, you've got, two linemen that are down, and then you've got the linebacker and somebody running the ball. And basically, it's like a violent drill. You just say hut, and then somebody makes the block, and you try to get through there.
Gotcha.
I liked it, but I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I liked it because you never ended up with somebody like relatively your size that you would normally tackle.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I swear I thought you were going to say Deion Sanders was your favorite player. Because as a cornerback, I thought you were going to say Deion Sanders was your favorite player as a cornerback, right? As a fellow cornerback.
Oh, no, I liked him as well. No, don't get me wrong. You know why I wouldn't say that?
Yeah.
Because he doesn't tackle.
Got it.
All right. And I was a hitting corner, so I didn't really. I love the fact that he was on an island by himself. I didn't like the fact that he taught everybody that you could play without tackling.
Got it. Awesome. Well, I think that's all we have for this. Coach, I want to give you the floor before we leave to talk a bit about fourth quarter training. If tell people how they can find you and some of the work that you guys are doing.
So, I mean, at fourth quarter, we're known for developing, talent. You don't have to be like the finished product. We have our 3 gyms at Victoria Park and Steeles at 7261 Victoria Park Avenue. We have 3 basketball courts as well as 3 volleyball courts. We train football there on Sunday nights over the winter. We train basketball there on Saturdays. We also have our Williams Academy football program, which we're starting the beginning of the season. Our first game is against Crothers on November the 5th at 6:00. So that should be good. That's the second year we're playing them, so it's turned into a rivalry. So we're pretty excited about that. And then we got our rep season coming up. We also have AAU. Once April hits, we start traveling the kids around the U.S. to play basketball. And one thing I do enjoy, which I do coach 7-on-7. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but I coach 7-on-7, and that starts in January, where your first tournament is in Florida, because most of the stuff you got to do for 7-on-7, you got to go to the U.S. because it's in the winter.
Got it.
So we got a packed schedule between basketball, football. That's really what we do, and that's our lives now.
It's amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time and taking time out of your busy day. I know you were telling me that your program, by the time you get home, is late at night. So thanks again for doing this, for talking to us. Best of luck with your program. Connect with you soon.
I appreciate you giving me the platform. It was nice talking to you guys. Hope we can do it again, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.